Hồi nãy tôi đang làm nửa chừng á thì cái máy nó hết pin thì tưởng là những cái lỗ cắm ở đây nó có điện anh chị em. Đây là văn phòng của à, tôi đang ở văn phòng của dân biểu Derek Tran để livestream buổi lễ nhậm chức. Nhưng mà cái building này thì anh chị em biết nó cũ rồi, nó hàng trăm năm rồi cho nên hồi nãy tôi cắm vô cái lỗ điện mà nó không có điện. Tôi tưởng là cái máy tôi nó bị hư nhưng mà té ra không có điện. Bây giờ tôi mua vào trong một cái văn phòng riêng, tránh văn phòng của Derek để mà dùng nơi đây để mà làm cái nơi để mà gửi đến anh chị em live cái buổi gọi là lễ tuyên thệ. Nhưng mà như anh chị em đã biết rồi thì vừa rồi thì Mike Johnson đã không được đủ cái túc số 218, cho nên bây giờ là phải bỏ phiếu lại. Và cái người mà đã chống ông ta, thứ nhất là người mà chắc chắn là sẽ không bao giờ bỏ phiếu cho ông ta, đó là Thomas Massey. Chắc chắn, ông ta nói chắc chắn, nhưng mà không biết à, ông Mike Johnson sẽ năng nỉ như thế nào thì chúng ta không biết, nhưng mà ông sẽ không bỏ phiếu. Ba người khác đó là Andy Biggs, Chip Roy và Victoria Sparks. Ba người này đều bỏ phiếu cho Mike Johnson, nhưng mà có hai người ngạc nhiên, đó là Ralph Norman và Keith Self. Thì hai người này đã bất ngờ không bỏ phiếu cho Mike Johnson. Thì hai người này á, là anh chị em biết á, là MAGA, mà MAGA thứ thiệt luôn nha. Ralph Norman và ông Self á, là đây tôi gửi đến hình ảnh. Ông Massey thì ông đã nói từ đầu rồi, không có gì ngạc nhiên cả. Nhưng mà đây là ông Massey, đây là ông Massey. Ông này ông đã nói là tôi sẽ không bỏ phiếu, thì ông đã thực hiện cái điều ông đã nói. Còn Andy Biggs, Chip Roy và Victoria Sparks đã thay đổi giờ chót, nhưng mà lại có hai ngạc nhiên là hai người khác không nói gì hết nhưng mà đã không bỏ phiếu cho ông Mike Johnson. Đây là ông Ralph Norman, đây là hình của ông ta đó. Ralph Norman là người thứ hai. Ralph Norman là một MAGA, mà MAGA hạng nặng nữa nha anh chị em. Và người thứ ba đó là ông Keith Self. Ông này á là cũng MAGA thứ thiệt luôn. Ông này là người đã từng tuyên bố rằng bầu cử 2020 là gian lận. Thì đây là vấn đề mà Mike Johnson cần đang giải quyết để mà đưa ông ta đến cái chức vụ là cầm cái búa, được cầm cái búa. Thì như anh chị em cũng thông cảm nha, trời Washington DC rất là lạnh lẽo vô cùng. Đến hồi sáng nay tôi đi là -2 độ, -2 độ C đó nha, -2 độ C. Và cho nên nó bây giờ được ngồi đây nó rất là ấm cúng. Bây giờ thì họ chuẩn bị bỏ phiếu lại, nên chị em khi mà họ bắt đầu bỏ phiếu lại thì tôi sẽ gửi đến anh chị em live. Và hiện giờ thì tôi đang đọc ở trên những cái tờ báo như tôi nói đó, là chỉ có 3 người không đồng ý để mà cho Mike Johnson nắm cái búa. Trong khi đó đảng Dân Chủ thì tất cả đều bỏ phiếu cho ông ông Jeffries, Hakim Jeffries. Nhưng mà đương nhiên anh chị em biết là ông sẽ không có được cái đủ túc số, và chắc sẽ không bao giờ được đâu, ngoài trừ đảng Cộng Hòa coi như quá là coi như là tẩu hỏa nhập ma. Thì có 3 người của đảng Cộng Hòa mà bỏ phiếu cho ông đó, thì ông trở thành coi như là phải nói là gì cho em, chủ tịch Hạ viện. Và như chúng ta biết đó là cái chuyện ngày hôm nay đó, nếu mà nó không xảy ra đó thì phần mai sẽ tiếp tục trở lại. Nếu mà ngày hôm nay mà ông Mike Johnson không đạt được cái tỷ số đó, nếu mà ông ta đạt được thì có thể đến tối nay thì chúng ta mới có buổi lễ tuyên thệ. Bây giờ là 2:35 chiều ở New York. Thì bây giờ được rồi anh chị em. Ủa Bây giờ được rồi đó. Ok, giờ tôi mở lên nha cho em. Họ đã bỏ phiếu lại rồi. Đây tôi xin mở lên. Thì có cái nghĩa là chúng ta không có phải chờ đợi lâu hơn nữa. Đây tôi xin share cái màn ảnh đó. Theo tôi được thấy đó là không phải cái này. Ông ta đã được rồi chị em. Đó, họ đã đổi phiếu rồi đó. Bây giờ ông ta được 218. Ông ta sẽ làm đó. Bây giờ thành ra chúng ta sẽ tiến tới làm bây giờ ông ta đang được chúc mừng bởi đảng Cộng hòa. Thì bây giờ có nghĩa là hai ông chỉ có ông Massey, Thomas Massey là còn giữ cái lá phiếu của mình, tức là không bỏ phiếu cho Mike Johnson. Còn tất cả những người khác, hai người kia đã đồng ý và ông ta sẽ là chủ tịch Hạ viện, và chúng ta sẽ sắp sửa sẽ có cái buổi gọi là tuyên thệ. Thì đây tôi đang kiếm những tin tức mới nha. Dạ, ông đã được rồi đó chị. Bây giờ là chỉ còn có là Thomas Massey chống thôi. Còn tất cả những người kia đã bỏ phiếu cho Mike Johnson.
He's never lied to me, and I know where he's at philosophically.
Bây giờ thì chúng ta sẽ có cái buổi lễ tuyên thệ chiều nay, và tối nay sẽ có bữa ăn để mà ăn tiệc mừng những tân dân biểu hay là những dân biểu mới đắc cử. Thì bây giờ anh chị em đã nghe cái kết quả rồi. Thực sự thì bây giờ cũng là một điều thôi, chúng ta cũng phải tiếp tục, nhưng mà điều này cho thấy rõ ràng là tiếng nói của Trump đã hai lần không có cái giá trị mạnh như ông ta nghĩ. Lần thứ nhất là để mà chống lại cái vấn đề trần nợ mà ông ta muốn buông thõng ra để mà ông ta được tha hồ các thuế. Và bây giờ lần thứ hai, qua cái sự yêu cầu của ông ta, thì Mike Johnson cũng phải vất vả để mà chiếm được cái chức chủ tịch Hạ viện. Và bây giờ thì đương nhiên chúng ta sẽ thấy
Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received one. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress.
Bây giờ thì ông tuyên bố rằng Mike Johnson đã trở thành chủ tịch Hạ viện về cái khóa 119.
The clerk appoints the following committee to escort the speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentleman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu.
Bây giờ những người này sẽ đưa
the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentlewoman from Indiana, Mrs. Houchin. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler.
Hello,
The
Roxanne.
gentleman from Michigan, Mrs. Dingle, and the members of the Louisiana delegation, Mr. Higgins, Ms. Letlow, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Fields. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the speaker-elect to the chair.
Bây giờ anh chị em xem live đi nha. Tôi phải bận một chút công việc và tôi sẽ trở lại sau.
And you're watching live coverage at the opening day of the 119th Congress. It's January 3rd, which is a constitutional date when the new Congress has to elect a speaker and go into business. Mike Johnson has been elected speaker 218 to 215 to 1. He got the majority of 434 members. That is the full Congress right now. The full Congress is actually 435 members, but Matt Gaetz, who did get reelected from his district in Florida, chose not to be sworn in, so he is not in the Congress as of right now. Coming up in just a minute, Mike Johnson will be escorted down to the dais, and he will be introduced by Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader who came in second place when it comes to being Speaker by only 3 votes. So then we will hear from Mike Johnson after he is sworn in as Speaker of the House by the clerk. Mike Johnson will make a speech. He will swear in all the members elect. There is technically no member of Congress right now until the Speaker gets sworn in, and he can swear in all 434 other members. 219 Republicans, 215 Democrats. That's what's going to be happening this afternoon. The drama or the process of electing a speaker has concluded on 1 vote. It did take about 2 hours. We started this process at about 12:45 Eastern time, and it was 2:36 when they finally declared Mike Johnson to be the speaker, and that was on 1 vote. Matt Green is with Catholic University, a politics professor. Professor Green, what's your assessment of what's happened so far this afternoon?
It certainly hasn't been as wild and drawn out as the last effort to elect a speaker after a new Congress in 2023. But at the same time, what we're seeing is a consequence of a very, very narrow majority that Republicans have, and the difficulty that both parties, but especially House Republicans, have had in keeping unified. When you have a very tiny majority on a vote where you're not going to get any votes from the other party, you've got to have everybody voting together. And it only in this case takes a handful to say no, to prevent or at least delay the selection of a speaker from the majority party.
And if you are just joining us, the vote had stood at 216 to 215. 418 was needed. 3 members voted for other people. Tom Massey, who promised that he was not going to vote for Mike Johnson all along, so he was already taken out of the equation, but he voted for the majority whip, Tom Emmer. Then Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, voted for Republican Jim Jordan, and Keith Self voted for Republican Byron Donalds. Well, then we saw, because we have the C-SPAN cameras in there today, which is lovely, we got to see Speaker Johnson, Keith Self, and Ralph Norman huddle and then walk off the floor. What do you think happened there?
Well, we heard from a congressman about what he thought happened.
Tim Burchett.
Yep. And so I think what Burchett said makes sense, which is that there was a conversation about what it is they need, what is it they want. And it could be anything from just a general promise to be a certain kind of speaker to something very specific. It could be bringing a bill on the floor. It could even be committee assignments. Who knows? I think we'll probably find out in the days ahead what that conversation was and what promises, if any, were made by Johnson.
But Ralph Norman and Keith Self had to walk down to the well, didn't they, to change their votes publicly?
Right. And that's a very important point, because we also had, I think, 7 Republicans choose not to vote
At all.
when their name first came up, which meant they would be called again. And so when their names were called again, they then said, I'll vote for Speaker Johnson. But because those 3 had voted, well, 2 of the 3, Massey never changed his vote, but the other 2 voted for a named candidate, they needed to go to the well and ask the clerk to change their vote, which is in some ways just a routine process. But if watching on C-SPAN, they had to walk down. The clerk had to say what their names were, how they originally voted, how they were going to change their vote. So it takes a bit more of an effort. And that's why Johnson had to go to the back room and have a conversation with them.
I remember, and maybe they're too young to remember this, but it was in 94, I believe it was, Bill Clinton was president. Marjorie Margolis-Novinsky cast a vote on a budget tax bill. And she was basically sent down. They left, the Democrats were in control. They left the floor open. She had to walk down to change her vote and did not win re-election after she changed her vote in support of this tax bill. So it's a very public way to cast a vote.
It is a public way, yeah. So that was that 1993 budget vote. And when she voted for the bill as a whole, after waiting a long time as a holdout, the Republicans basically chanted, bye-bye, you're leaving after the next election.
You do remember that.
Right. So these two Republicans who switched their vote, they may have made their party in the House happy, the conference happy. But if they have constituents who didn't want them to vote for Johnson, they're going to have to explain why they chose to go to the well and actually change their vote. And so that's why, I think you generally don't want to do that if you can avoid it, because it does put a great deal of attention, a spotlight on why you chose to change your vote.
And both Keith Self and Ralph Norman, as well as Tom Massey, at least historically, are very, very safe.
Yes, but the politics that we have now, safe means safe from the other party, but not necessarily safe in a primary election. So that is where you still have to worry as an incumbent that you could lose re-election.
Who was the longest serving speaker? Do you know offhand?
The longest serving speaker was Sam Rayburn, who first became speaker in 1941 and then served off and on until his death in 1961.
Democrat, Texas.
Democrat from Texas.
What was his special power? What was his ability?
Well, he had a lot of special powers, but he was a very good fit for the nature of the House and the Democratic caucus at the time. He was very good at negotiating. He was very good at sort of balancing the different wings of his party. He had a northern liberal wing and a southern conservative wing. Part of that was discussions and conversation. Part of it was making sure that southern wing had sufficient influence in terms of sitting on committees and being chairs of committees. It also meant keeping certain things off the House floor that would divide his party, particularly civil rights, until not in his entire speakership, but for much of his speakership, trying to avoid the kind of public fights that would divide the party and give the minority Republicans leverage.
There was a speaker in the 1920s who was married to Alice Roosevelt. Joseph buildings are named after him, right? Nicholas Longworth.
Nicholas Longworth.
Right. Was he an impactful speaker?
He was. He didn't serve as long as folks like Rayburn, or as you mentioned, also Pelosi also served as speaker for quite a long time. But in terms of his ability to govern the House, he was fairly adept at it. He also, interestingly, was part of negotiations for a protracted battle for speaker in the 1920s. Not his race for speaker, but for, I believe it was Gillette was the Republican nominee. And there were a progressive bloc in the Republican conference who didn't want to vote for him. So he was part of the negotiations to try to get them successfully to vote for the Republican nominee.
Well, there are three House buildings on the other side of the Capitol. We've talked about Mr. Rayburn. He has a building named after him, Mr. Longworth, and then Mr. Cannon. We'll find out about Mr. Cannon a little bit later.
Johnson to the state of Louisiana.
Speaker Emerita Pelosi, it's great to see you back in the chamber. Chairman Aguilar, thank you for your kind and generous words of nomination. To my colleagues in government, new members of Congress, families, friends, all those assembled. It's a high honor and a distinct privilege to welcome you to the People's House and the 119th Congress. The Bible teaches us in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, 1st verse, that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. It's fair to say that in a democracy, there's a time to campaign and a time to govern. The election is over. This is a new Congress. The American people need us as their elected representatives in this season to put down our partisan swords and pick up bipartisan plowshares. It's time for us to come together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, to get things done for the people. In that spirit, House Democrats will work hard to find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues in the incoming administration on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to make life better for everyday Americans. For far too long in this country, the size of the middle class has come down. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Healthcare costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. America is too expensive. There are far too many people in this great country who for decades have been struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. That is not acceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We need to build an affordable economy for hard-working American taxpayers, and we need to build it now. It's time for us to come together and finally lower the high cost of living in the United States of America once and for all. We will work with anyone of any party to get that done. We will work with anyone to secure our borders, and we will work with anyone to fix our broken immigration system in a comprehensive and bipartisan manner. At the same period of time, we will push back against far-right extremism whenever necessary. So let me be clear. Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. They are earned benefits. Hard-working American taxpayers pay in to Social Security and Medicare every day, every week, every month, every year throughout their entire adult life. They earn those benefits, work hard for those benefits, and deserve those benefits. So as Democrats are promised,
if we
the
win, we
American people is that we will fight hard to make sure that no one in this town takes away Social Security or Medicare from the American people.
Sorry, I was not prepared. Yeah. This is it.
is that it is not acceptable to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut veterans benefits, or cut nutritional assistance from children and families in order to pay for massive tax breaks for billionaires and wealthy corporations. Most Democrats will fight hard to protect working class Americans and the things that matter to them, not the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Keep your hands off Social Security and Medicare. Over the last 4 years, it's been a great honor for us to work alongside President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, whose administration rescued the economy from a once-in-a-century pandemic, delivered historic infrastructure investments, created more than 15 million good-paying jobs, enacted common sense gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years, provided life-sustaining health insurance to veterans suffering from toxic exposure, championed the largest investment in combating the climate crisis in the history of the world, which we will defend, and brought down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. Thank you, President Biden and Vice President Harris, for your powerful, principled, and purposeful public service. Thank you. Two months ago, the American people elected Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States of America. Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. One should love America. One should love America when you win and when you lose. That's the patriotic thing to do. And that's the America that House Democrats will fight hard to preserve because we love this country. America is bigger than any one campaign, any one election, or any one individual. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Let us never forget that our country is free, not simply because we are strong. America is strong because we are free. That freedom is now under assault. There are some in this country who apparently believe that the freedom of economic opportunity that made them wealthy should not apply to everyone else. Our message to that crowd is simple. Democrats will never abandon the long walk toward freedom. We will fight hard to defend the freedom of opportunity that makes the American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote and to fight for a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We will fight for the freedom to organize and join a union of your choice. We will fight to defend the free enterprise system, but work hard to make sure that it actually works for working class Americans. And we will always defend a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. America promises one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's the America House Democrats will fight hard to preserve. God bless you. God bless the House of Representatives. May God continue to bless the United States of America. It is now my responsibility to present the gavel to the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana. The son of a firefighter, a God-fearing man, a husband, and a loving father of four. The 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, all of our treasured colleagues here in the House. I'm grateful for this nomination. I'm grateful for this election, for the confidence this chamber has placed in me. It is the great honor of my life to serve this body with all of you. Of course, these are difficult days in our home state of Louisiana, where I come from. We all know about the terrorist attack in New Orleans, and it's really shaken our state. People are reeling from that attack. It took the lives of 14 innocent people and it injured dozens more. And I wanted to begin appropriately today. If we could, I'd ask you all to join me in a moment of silence for the victims of this horrific act. Thank you. Thank you for that. I believe in giving honor where honor is due, and all of us do well to honor our spouses. My wife happens to be here this time. She didn't make it last time. It happened a little sudden. Kelly, would you stand up here in the gallery? Thank you. And we have our four children here, Hannah, Abby, Jack, and Will. We all stand up just really quickly. Come on. I wanted to do that. All of us recognize that there are no perks to being a congressman's kid, right? It's all sacrifice. And our spouses put up with so much, endless hours in travel and all the responsibilities upon us. And we're good to remind them how important they are to us and how we could not do the job without them. And so it's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you. Thank you, guys. This is a momentous time in the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is without debate. We are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. It's not by happenstance. We're the ones who settled the West. We're the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War. Throughout our history, we have done what no one thought was possible. And still, at 250 years old, our nation is actually a young nation. This past fall, I had an opportunity to go to the G7 speakers meeting that was held in Italy. It's the only international trip I took as speaker over the last 14 months because I didn't have time to do it, but it was a quick 3-day jaunt, and met with my colleagues, the speakers of the other parliaments, the great governments around the world. And we talked about that, how really special America is, how unique we are in our place on the globe, and how important it is for us to maintain that. And as I talked to these colleagues from around the world, I thought our closest allies, who recognize how important we are, how important this body, this house is. I thought about how is it that such a young country has become so exceptional, so singular in its importance, that today stands as the world's leader in liberty and the economy and culture. 100 years ago, President Calvin Coolidge answered that very question in his inaugural address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. He said this: "We best serve our own country and most successfully discharge our obligations to humanity by continuing to be openly and candidly, intensely and scrupulously American." I love that. I love that. Today, yeah, that's right. That's an applause line. Today, my friends, our nation is the envy of the world. Why? Because we have been marked by a spirit and a people who are explicitly that. We are explicitly American. We don't try to be like other nations, and we recognize that a strong America is good for the entire world. And everybody around the globe knows that. Right. We also recognize that the core principles that made America what we are must still be preserved today. The principles, I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but it's really the 7 core principles of the nation itself. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity. These are the ingredients, the things that made us who we are. And in America, we know that human flourishing is best achieved by adherence to time-tested truths. We could list a number of those simple truths. Here's a couple. It's better to give a hand up than a hand out. That innovation thrives when bureaucracy dies. The simple truth that it is parents, families, and not administrators that must be in charge of their children's education. The path of prosperity has long been paved with policies that put America and Americans first. And that is what we will champion in the 119th Congress. We have a mandate that was shown in the election cycle. People want an America First agenda. They do. Sadly, for the past 4 years of divided government, too many politicians in Washington have done the opposite. Open borders and overregulation have destroyed our cities and stifled innovation. Inflation and weak leadership have left Americans poor, and they have placed our country in a perilous position. That's right. But in recent months, we've witnessed something happening, something that's really remarkable, a political moment in our modern history, a groundswell of Americans from every state, race, and religion who now demand that we put the interest of Americans first again, and we will, and we will. This is a powerful new coalition of our country. It's a coalition that insists that we purge the policies of America last and we bury them in the graveyard of history's mistakes, because it was a big mistake. To that end, this Congress will renounce the status quo and we will listen to the voices of the people. We will act quickly and we will start by defending our nation's borders. That's the number one priority. In coordination with President Trump, this Congress will give our border and immigration enforcement agents the resources that they need to do their job. We will secure the border, we will deport dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens, and finally finish building the border wall. You said you'd work with us on that, Hakeem. I'm counting on it. After 4 years of high inflation, we have a big agenda. We have a lot to do, and we can do it in a bipartisan fashion. We can fight high inflation, and we must. We'll give relief to Americans, and we'll extend the Trump tax cuts. We're going to protect our industries from one-sided trade deals, and we're going to bring overseas investments back to America's shores. That's right. We'll defeat the harmful effects of inflation, and we'll make life affordable again for America's hardworking people. As leaders of a nation with vast natural resources that God has blessed us with, it is our duty to restore America's energy dominance. And that's what we'll do. We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas. Pass legislation to eliminate the Green New Deal. That funding. To expedite new drilling permits, we're going to save the jobs of our auto manufacturers, and we're going to do that by ending the ridiculous EV mandates. And as heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that. Our people do not deserve to be ruled by millions of bureaucrats they've never voted for, never met, and can never hold accountable. They deserve a government that is led by those they've elected to lead. That is how Article 1 is supposed to work. That was the idea of the Congress, and we will return to that principle. The American people have called on us to reject business as usual and throw out the status quo. We must and we will heed their call. This is especially important as it comes to our nation's military. For too long, the Washington establishment has sought to appease and accommodate our nation's adversaries. They've tried to replace our military warriors with social justice warriors. It does not work. And while we're still the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world, by God's grace, the same establishment has eroded the capacities of our Army and Navy and diminished the readiness of our Air Force. We have to put an end to this madness. My friends and my colleagues, I think we should all unite in this idea. It is time now to reinstate fear in our enemies, refocus our mission on lethality, and realign our commitment to peace through strength right now. We have to prioritize the things that matter most. We have to make adequate investments in defense. This is the most dangerous moment since World War II, and everyone around the world is looking to America and looking to this body to ensure that we maintain the peace. What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful personally that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so. When I first took this gavel, many of you heard me say that I don't believe in luck or consequence. I believe in the idea of providence. This morning, I participated with many of you early this morning in the 119th Congress Interfaith Prayer Service. It was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church. Many of you were there. It was an ecumenical service and a bipartisan service, which was great. My good friend Hakeem Jeffries began by reading with the Old Testament. He read out of Deuteronomy 10. And then I was asked to provide a prayer for the nation. I offered one that is quite familiar to historians and probably many of us. It said right here in the program, it says right under my name, it is said each day of his 8 years of the presidency and every day thereafter until his death, President Thomas Jefferson recited this prayer. I wanted to share it with you here at the end of my remarks, not as a prayer per se right now, but as really as a reminder of what our third president and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence thought was so important that it should be a daily recitation. Let me just read you that prayer. It goes like this. Thomas Jefferson's Prayer for the Nation is entitled. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law, we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail, of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. That was Thomas Jefferson's prayer. Yeah. Suffer not our trust in thee to fail. We will not fail. We cannot fail. We are all in this together. Our nation is counting on us to band together and solve these problems and get this done. I've said before that I believe God has elevated each one of you, that's my belief, to your positions of leadership. And it's an act of providence that you've all been placed in your specific roles in this specific moment at this historic time, at the 250-year inflection point of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is no small thing. We're also witnesses to the providence that spared our incoming president, President Trump, from the assassin's bullet, remarkable as that was, and to the new coalition of Americans that has risen from every creed, color, and cul-de-sac who want us to put America first. Our people are asking for a thriving economy and a rebuilt middle class and strong borders and a strong military, and we can deliver that. See, these objectives and these aims don't have an R or a D behind them. They have a USA. That's what we're about. In a few moments, we're all going to take an oath. It is the same one oath for one nation and under the banner of one great American flag. This is an opportunity for us to protect our shared American heritage, to maintain the conditions needed for self-government, and to defend what Hakeem said earlier, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Working together, we have the potential to be one of the most consequential Congresses in the history of this great nation. So long as we work together, we do the right thing, and we put America first. As we think about all we've accomplished in the past 250 years, we can only imagine what life will be like 250 years from now. Whatever the future may look like, if we do our jobs now, we can help ensure that our civic virtues will endure, that this nation will still be an example to all the world for its greatness and its example of self-government, and that in spite of our great challenges and even our disagreements and our healthy debates, this extraordinary institution, the People's House, will still be standing strong. Thank you all so much, and God bless America. So as the sequence of events requires, I am now ready to take the oath of office. I ask the Dean of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Harold Rogers of Kentucky, to administer the oath. Hold just a second, Dean. We don't have the microphone on.
Right. Our shared American self-rule. When our founding fathers rejected calls for an American king and chose a bold and innovative government of self-rule, it was met by opposition, understandably, by the world's kings. They said, "You can't govern yourself. You need a king to direct the country." They said, "It's only a dream." So the founding fathers said, "You're right. It's the American dream." And thus our founders said that we should move on our own with our own leadership. The Speaker of the House is the critical protector and promoter of self-rule, the keeper of the dream, if you will. And we've elected this man from Louisiana to carry on our bold experiment in democracy and self-rule. So, sir, if you're ready to assume this awesome responsibility, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely, that you take this obligation without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter. So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
You may as well remain standing because according to precedent, the chair will swear in the members-elect en masse. The members-elect will all rise. The chair will now administer the oath of office. Will you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter, so help you God. Congratulations, you are now members of the 119th Congress.